April 1945. Germany was finished. Beneath the smoldering ruins of the Reich Chancellery, deep within the Führer bunker, Hitler pushed around phantom divisions, clinging desperately to his delusions of a final victory. In the north, Grand Admiral Karl Dönitz, Supreme Commander of the Kriegsmarine, had just relocated to the Stadtheide barracks in Plön, Schleswig-Holstein, with the remnants of the Reich government. As the head of Northern Military and Civil Command, Dönitz was fighting for time. Each passing day of resistance meant hundreds of thousands more civilians could flee westward, escaping the horrors of Soviet retribution. For that, he needed Hamburg as his base of operations. As the Allies surged across the Rhine, Dönitz pressed the last of his loyal sailors into ground combat, forming the First Marine-Panzerjagd Regiment. By this late stage of the war, Hamburg was already a city in ruins. Allied Bomber Command, believing that inflicting maximum civilian casualties would break German morale, had dropped an estimated 9,000 tons of bombs on the city between July and August 1943 in Operation Gomorrah. The result was devastating. Over 40,000 civilians killed, and 60% of the city's housing destroyed. Nevertheless, Hamburg remained one of the last major cities under German control. Situated on the Elbe River, it had become a critical refugee hub for civilians fleeing the horrors of the Eastern Front. The Kriegsmarine had ferried millions of refugees from East Prussia, Pomerania, and Silesia across the Baltic Sea into the region, while hundreds of thousands more arrived by land, either trying to reach Western Allied-controlled territory or seeking protection under the last remnants of the Reich government. Unlike the Wehrmacht and SS, which were shattered on all fronts, the Kriegsmarine was still semi-functional. Hamburg remained one of its last key bases, home to U-boat facilities, naval headquarters, and thousands of naval personnel. As food shortages became critical, these men took on a new role, organizing further evacuations, ferrying refugees northward to Denmark and Norway. As hopeless as the situation was, Dönitz was determined to fight, not for victory, but to maintain an orderly surrender. If Hamburg fell too quickly, chaos could ensue, and the entire Eastern Front would collapse, leaving civilians defenseless against Soviet retribution or rogue SS elements. Every hour Hamburg resisted meant more German units, and civilians could reach Western lines in an orderly fashion. From the Western Allied perspective, the real fear was that Germany might try to stall the advance, hold out in the north, and organize resistance, prolonging the war. The British, having already bombed Hamburg into oblivion, were determined to collapse the German command structure, rather than risk the possibility of a northern redoubt. Additionally, the Western Allies sought to secure as much German territory as possible, cutting off any chance of further Soviet advances. By seizing Hamburg, the British would solidify their control over northern Germany, ensuring it remained under Western occupation, rather than falling into the hands of the Soviets. Before we get into it, thank you guys for tuning into another episode of The War Room. If you enjoyed this content, please like and subscribe. Your support means the world to me. If you're interested in owning some of the pieces I showcased, I have listed some of my work on eBay, link below. Your direct financial support helps me source more materials for future videos. Thanks again. And now let's get back to what you're here for. The Kriegsmarine organized itself into the First Marine-Panzerjagd Regiment, built around a corps of naval cadets, U-boat submariners, and army officers, bolstered by sailors, coastal artillerymen, and naval office workers. The regiment, led by famed U-boat Captain Robert Geisai, based itself in the woods south of Hamburg to shield the city. This impression depicts a coastal artilleryman pressed into the First Marine-Panzerjagd Regiment. He wears a mix of naval and army-issued gear, reflecting Kriegsmarine's attempt in adapting to ground combat. His M42 helmet is painted in shipboard gray with gold eagle decal, unique to the Kriegsmarine. His M43 field blouse, though similar to those of the Heer and SS, is adorned with early-type Kriegsmarine brass buttons. The collar tabs stand out, being gold and white, with dark blue edging, and his shoulder board bears the coastal artillery insignia. Beneath it, he wears a black turtleneck, a staple among naval troops, offering extra warmth in northern Germany's harsh spring chill. On his chest, he also dons the coastal artillery badge, a symbol of his regular service defending Germany's shores. Uniquely, he's armed with a MP-28 submachine gun, the improved and upgraded version of the interwar MP-18. This weapon had long been phased out from the regular Wehrmacht, but was heavily distributed to Kriegsmarine coastal artillery. Equally rare are the pair of original MP-28 magazine pouches, made from smooth leather, its design originating from older pre-war designs that had a slick look but less reloading efficiency. Around his waist, he wears a Kriegsmarine belt buckle, navy gold instead of army silver. On his Y-strap, the unconventional way his army-issue Zeltbahn and shovel are strapped to his A-frame highlights the ad hoc nature of his equipment. Standard Wehrmacht gear hastily repurposed for a Kriegsmarine unit now fighting on land, armed with nothing more than handheld anti-tank weapons. The First Marine-Panzerjagd Regiment managed to destroy over 40 British tanks through ambush tactics. Using the dense forests and urban ruins to their advantage, they staged hit-and-run attacks, striking advancing British armor before disappearing into cover. The Marine Jaegers became so effective that the British suspended their advance, allocating an entire 53rd Welsh Infantry Division, supported by a tank regiment, to assault the woods directly. After intense fighting, the regiment was finally captured. However, the Kriegsmarines' holdout south of Hamburg delayed the British advance by over 2 weeks, holding on until Hitler's suicide and the transfer of power to Grand Admiral Dönitz, who immediately began a peaceful, controlled surrender of northern Germany. I hope you enjoyed my research into this little-known last stand of the Kriegsmarine and their sacrifice for an orderly capitulation. This story turned out to be so much more than I initially expected when I first came across the unit's intriguing name. Thank you again for staying tuned. This is the War Room, signing off.